But now we are going to go into a conversation with Professor Ntsikelelo Breakfast just to unpack some of these issues, and we have him on the line. Professor Breakfast, good afternoon to you. Great to speak to you. Just a summary from your perspective on some of the issues. In fact, it's a 13-point plan that has been outlined by the IFP leader.
Yeah, the IFP has always struck me as a party that belongs to the right of the political spectrum. It's a reactionary party because they believe in the free market system. Even in the manifesto, there's reference to fiscal discipline. There's reference to a flexible labor market system, which is hiring and firing. And to me, that is tantamount to a political assault on the working class. I mean, the neoliberal approach of the elevation of the market forces above history, in particular in our context. If you look at the application of the gear policy, which led to unrest, a lot of workers, they tend to down tools when you implement policies of the right. So I'll be very cautious of that. But also there are some policies with a human face, like, for instance, state interventionist approach. He spoke about giving away 3,000 rand to unemployed graduates, the retainment of the land into the hands of Ngonyama Trust, though that is a thorny issue because of the findings by Ntate Motlanthe, who recommended that the land under Ngonyama Trust must be taken away. Yeah, I mean, there are quite a number of interesting things, like they believe in energy mix, they believe in coal, they believe in gas, and also the role of traditional leaders. I think that will work for them because political power comes from two sources, namely the rural and the urban centers. So I think KZN in particular, I know that they're not confined to KZN, but they've got a strong footprint in KZN. KZN has a lot of traditional leaders, and they play a role in terms of telling the electorate how to vote.
Professor Breakfast, I just want to talk to the practicality of some of the elements or pillars of this election manifesto that we've just listened to. Now, when we take a look at that SASSA grant, which is at 350 Rand a month, and government is struggling with that 350 Rand. So whilst the number of unemployed graduates is not nearly as high as the various beneficiaries of the SASSA grant at the moment, but let's talk about the practicality of being able to give 3,000 unemployed graduates a stipend for a period.
Yeah. So Hugo, you are raising a very important matter. That's a very important question. In my opinion, there are two typologies of fiscal policy. The first one is expansionary fiscal policy, which is the one that we are pursuing as a country, which has to do with, a large budget that looks after the poor. And then you have what is called contractionary fiscal policy, which is fiscal discipline, in my opinion, which has to do with a reduction of government expenditure. The problem is that there is no way we can consolidate our democracy if we're turning a blind eye to the poorest of the poor. We cannot. Otherwise, we're going to have social unrest. Workers will down tools every now and then. Therefore, you need a capitalist mode of production with a human face, a capitalist mode of production that reaches out to those who are on the margins of the economy. That's why we had a social conflict that broke out in 2021. So, I mean, the fact that we've got a budget deficit doesn't mean that we must reduce government expenditure. One of the reasons why our economy is not performing the way it should have is because of institutional factors, because of a lack of a disciplined bureaucracy. That must be addressed. But that doesn't mean that you must lead a political assault on the poor.
Hi, Professor Breakfast, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so let's touch on service delivery. I mean, he's talked about improving government service delivery, which involves enhancing efficiency, transparency, and accountability in the delivery of public services. Now, and I suppose in part this speaks to the history of the IFP and the areas in which it's governed. Is it putting its money where its mouth is?
Well, I mean, it does have a history of accelerating service delivery. As you know, Hugo, in 1994, it was in power under the leadership of, I think, I forgot the premier then. But they did very well, in my view. I think it was Frank Mjalose, yes. And then I think with the influence of Msholozi in the politics of KZN, because Msholozi became the chairperson of the ANC in KZN and dislodged, the IFP from the helm of power because of his political capital. That's why, for instance, even of late, you've seen the electoral performance of the ANC has been dealt with a blow, partly because of the withdrawal of Jacob Zuma. So the point I'm making, the IFP does have a history of getting the job done in terms of promoting development. It's just that some of their policies, they don't speak to the audience that they are pitching their message to.
Well, they did talk about the land issue, and one of a few political parties that speak to the land issue. Do you feel that this is something that will resonate with the audience that they are speaking to?
Well, land is money and land is the economy. But the challenge with the policy that they are proposing is that they don't want the people to have ownership of the land. They want the trust to have ownership of the land, which is problematic. I think land must belong to the people as opposed to the elite. So I'm not sure if that will sit well with everyone throughout the length and the breadth of the country. Mainly the audience that the message was pitched to within the context of the manifesto was people in KZN. That argument can sit well with them. But I'm not sure if you can extrapolate that, to the length and the breadth of the country. I think land must be under the stewardship of the people.
Professor Breakfast, before we let you go, international relations, I think, is a key conversation at the moment. A little bit earlier, we were discussing how the DA has appealed to a number of countries, the UK, the United States, and others, to assist in the upcoming elections. Your take on that aspect to the election manifesto?
Of the IFP?
Correct, of the IFP.
There was an omission, and it was not a mere omission. It was a significant omission regarding matters of foreign policy. I didn't hear Ndate Nhlabisa making reference to the war that is underway between Ukraine and Russia, because that war has had a negative impact on our inflation, because Russia is the large oil producer. That war has had a negative impact on our interest rates. That war has had a negative impact on fuel. So it's a very important war. So to keep quiet on that, but then talking about development, really signifies that you are not in touch with what is happening on a global scale. But interestingly, there's also another omission, which is the war that is underway between Israel and Palestine. But there was perpetual silence in that regard, because that war also has to do with issues of human rights. So it could have been good if he had said something about that. Even also issues of multilateralism on the African continent, issues of AU, geopolitics at SADC level. There was nothing of the sort.
So do these omissions speak to areas of weakness for the IFP? We obviously know that with any political party, when they launch a manifesto, they will speak generally to their strengths. So these omissions, what do they tell us?
I think our understanding of political realities is the result of what is reported to us by the media. The production of public discourse is politically engineered. the media in this country doesn't do justice, in my opinion, in terms of the coverage of what is happening on the international front. That's why, for instance, foreign relations don't influence the political behavior of the electorate. That's why some political parties don't take issues of foreign policy seriously, which is a matter of concern in my view, as opposed to what is happening in the U.S., because I would argue strongly and say that matters of foreign policy in the U.S., they influence, the political behavior of the electorate, largely because of a substantial amount of money is allocated to the military, which impacts on the domestic front.